bio is read out loud in front of me, because I sometimes cringe, like, wow, that's a lot that I am doing at one time. And then kind of coupling that with my story, it kind of makes sense, because as you read, I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and I was raised by my mom and my grandmother, and both of them were the exact same way. I watched them both my entire life. Both of them had businesses. My grandmother was a stylist and owned several salons and a cosmetology school in Richmond. My mom had a consulting business when I was growing up. She also was a hairstylist, and she just did a number of things. So I always saw strong women working hard to accomplish the things in life that they wanted to accomplish, that they needed to accomplish for their families. And it wasn't it didn't come off as a hard task for them to do. They pulled it off so beautifully and flawlessly. And I would watch my grandmother every day. She would get up early and cook breakfast and go into the shop and do hair all day and come home and cook dinner and still watch the Cosby Show with me, and as if she hadn't done this all day. It was so beautiful. And so when I went to college, I kind of had grown up doing everything. I was in Girl Scouts. I was in organizations. I was cheering. So my mom really exposed me to a lot. And by the time I went to college, I was so used to doing so many multiple things at one time. It just seemed very natural for me to get to college and, to join the choir, to join college level NAACP, to pledge AKA, and to do all of these things at the same time while still maintaining a good enough GPA. When I left college, and I'm sure we'll dive a little bit deeper into how I kind of transitioned into economic development. But when I left college, I started working in the entertainment industry. My yeah, my senior year of college, I actually had a job offer from Sony Music, where I was the college marketing rep for the colleges in Virginia and some in DC and part of Maryland. So while I was in college, I would on the weekend travel through these states to colleges on tour with different artists and hitting radio stations, providing them with music, and did that my entire senior year of college. And when I graduated from JMU, I ended up taking an offer from Black Entertainment Television, where I worked for about 3 years before I went back to get my master's in Miami. And it was kind of during that transition to Miami and then back up to the Maryland, DC area that I really got interested in business and business development. And I was always interested in entrepreneurship, but I just knew where the path that my grandmother and my mother took to do hair. I didn't want to do hair. I wanted to be on another side. I just didn't know what that was until later in life. So I think that's kind of where the transition that pivot kind of took place for me.
Okay. So you have always been kind of doing a lot of things, and so it feels natural to you. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing about your mother and your grandmother and the influences. I think that has so much to do with how we envision ourselves, the role models that we have growing up, and seeing other women, because I know you work a lot with women who are able to have their own businesses, is a great thing to be able to see growing up when you're thinking about having your own. So when you talked about all of the different things that you do, you just seem so young to me to have accomplished all of the things that you've done. And I see that I know that you are an expert in terms of economic empowerment and women entrepreneurship. I could easily have named this Pink Wall Street instead of Black Wall Street in terms of focusing on women. And I might just change the name. I was thinking about that. I'm like, maybe it
That would
should be
have been
Pink.
fun.
I think that would be fun. I haven't heard anybody coin that yet. I'm sure somebody said it before. But when you're young and you're this accomplished, some people talk about having imposter syndrome and things like that. But when did you first realize that you were an expert?
Well, I can tell you when I first realized that I needed to make a difference in this space. I think that for me was a bit more pivotal than kind of the development as a thought leader. So I remember working for an entertainment company, one that I didn't mention, and I had this great idea. I mean, I thought this idea was the next thing smoking. I mean, so I worked on it, worked hard. I put my notes together, and I got an opportunity to talk to the CEO of this entertainment company. That's very familiar. So I had my opportunity, go in, have this meeting. I'm very polished. I think I am. I got my notes. I'm going through. I'm pitching. How can he say no to this? I'm about to be the VP of this whole company. I'm thinking in my head. So he looks at me and he says, okay, but I'll tell you this. This is my company that I built. And as long as I'm making the type of money doing the type of programming that I'm doing, I'm going to keep doing that.
Wow.
So I picked my pride up and walked out of the room, and I was a little broken. But one thing that he said that stuck with me is that it is his business. And it was his right to make every decision. And unless you can say, this is mine, then you will never have the ultimate control or the ultimate say over how anything is done. And that's not a knock to anyone who works a 9 to 5 at all. But that point, when he said that to me, it was that moment where I knew, you know what, that's exactly right. That is the game changer. It's when you can actually pivot and have something that is yours, that you can kind of define and make the rules. I think to me, I wouldn't say that's what kind of triggered me to be an expert, but it humbled me enough to see that entrepreneurship and the road to the driver of economic mobility for the Black community or communities of color started with owning for yourself. Whatever that looked like for you, whether you're a service business, whether you have a bricks and mortar, retail, a product, whatever it is, when you have that control and when you understand the market enough to be successful at it, that is when you are an expert in your own right, because you're an expert at your own future and you're the only one who can kind of pave that way for yourself.
I love that, an expert at your own future. And I can only imagine what that felt like in that moment. You thought that this was going to be the next good thing.
It was devastating.
It just blew out your little light, but left you with a really important message and probably a little bit of fire to figure that thing out so that you could make the rules for yourself. I attended a conference at Duke University a few months ago, and one of the panels was on Black Wall Street. And one of the things that I realized while participating in that panel was that there were so many different definitions of Black Wall Street. Some people define it in its historical concept of what actually existed and got burned down, and some people define it as a virtual space of Black people coming together, bringing their wealth together. So as we have this conversation on Black Wall Street, which we may turn into Pink Wall Street, I would love to hear what your definition is of Black Wall Street.
Sure, sure. And, as you mentioned, there are so many different definitions of it, and all are very relevant to the Black community. Black Wall Street in Tulsa, in an area, Greenwood. And in Greenwood, what is most relevant as we think of, and there are so many resurgence of Black Wall Street communities across the country, is that in Greenwood, it was said that the Black dollar stayed within the Black community for 100 days minimum, meaning that Black community members, their dollar circulated among other Black businesses and was turned over for 100 days before it left the Black community. So when we think about Black Wall Street now, what it means to me is it isn't just the businesses, because we can have communities where there are thriving Black businesses, but are there also Black people within those communities that will patronize those businesses and continue to turn over that money in Black businesses and in Black communities, such that that cycle continues? Because that's the way that wealth in Greenwood was able to flourish the way that it did, because the money stayed right within that community. And today, do you know how long the Black dollar stays in the Black community?
I don't even want to guess. I would say maybe 3 days.
6 hours.
Yeah.
6 hours.
6 hours.
Yeah. In the white community, it's 17 days. In the Asian community, it's 30 days.
Wow.
Black community, it's 6 hours that our dollar stays within our community. And that's that should speak to us.
Mm-hmm.
That should speak to us, because it's never that there is a lack of the things that we need created by people of color, right? If we were intentional about our spending, we could find mostly anything we needed created by someone who looked like us, to make that difference, or at least to be more intentional about our purchasing, to kind of tap into that Black Wall Street feeling, into that Black Wall Street community, because that's what truly made Black Wall Street.
Yeah. I did not know that. Thank you for sharing that information. And one of our listeners also thought that that was good information. But yeah, I think I'm still like tongue tied over hearing that 6 hours. And then when you say the Asian community, 30 days, it makes sense intuitively, just watching how certain businesses move and in certain communities. So I'm going to have to process that and think about some calls to action around that, or maybe you'll have some for us by the end of this conversation.
It definitely requires kind of a shift in thinking, because I think we spent so long, as you think about the civil rights, and we were fighting because we wanted to do everything with everybody else. We wanted to be equal. We wanted to kind of be, I see Kimberly's question that within the Latino community, it's 19 days. We wanted to be so equal and have all the access that we kind of stepped away from, our own roots and our own cultures of supporting our own people and our own businesses. And I think until we kind of make that adjustment, until we're intentional about our spending and intentional about our buying habits to support, Black businesses, it'll be hard for us to kind of recreate that Black Wall Street experience. Black businesses, it'll be hard for us to kind of recreate that Black Wall Street experience.
Yes, absolutely.
It'll be hard for us to kind of recreate that Black Wall Street experience.
I know that we have many listeners who are absolutely. I know that we have. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
It was so good information. We just had to hear it a couple times over.
Right, exactly. We just needed it on repeat. I love technology. I know that we have listeners and people who are women business owners, who are Black business owners. And I would love, from your perspective, especially now that we have this knowledge, what does it take for us to be successful as a woman led entrepreneur or Black woman led entrepreneur? What are some of the things that you've learned in your experience?
I would say the number one thing is that there are no rules to it. There are no rules to being a business owner. You kind of make and define what that success looks like to your life. And when people say to me, well, I want to start a business, I want to get my business plan together, my first question is, do you have a life plan? Because
Mm,
I need to see how you want a business to fit into your life in order for me to be able to assess what type of business journey you're going to have. Because if your life plan is sending you down a path where that doesn't necessarily have, it doesn't fit what your business goals are, then it may delay you opening a business or you starting that business for a couple years. For me, I have, as you mentioned in my bio, I have a job that I do. I have two businesses, and I also teach. And it's by design, and it's by because that's the way I want it. It's
mhm,
not because I have to do any of those things. And it took me realizing I don't have to choose. I don't have to choose one over the other. I can do all of them. And that's fine because that's my journey. And I think for a lot of women in particular, we have a picture of what entrepreneurship looks like or a picture of what a successful business looks like. And we kind of mimic that route for them. And I find that the most successful businesses are identifying what their goals are for their business. I want to be a business owner where I just replace my income. I have a $60,000 job. I want to have a business where I make $60,000. I want to basically be self employed. Or
mhm,
I want a business where I can employ 60,000 people. That's two
mhm,
different mindsets to think about. And that's two different ways to start a business because now we're talking about scaling and how you put in place those measures to scale your business to be able to create jobs for 60,000 people or even, six people for that matter. That
mhm,
is a different level of mentality than being self-employed because then you're just replacing one income for another, which is fine, which is totally fine, but it's just a difference. So identifying what your goal is as a business owner is always the first step to me. I think once you get in business, and I cannot stress this enough to anyone who is listening who owns a business, is know your worth as a business owner. Know the value of whatever good or service that you're selling. Because if your bank account doesn't match the brilliance that you bring to your business, then that's a
mhm,
problem, right? So it's all good to make a widget that you're selling for $10 because you want people to buy it. But if that widget costs you $9.50, then it what's the purpose? So I think knowing the value of whatever it is that you are selling or what service it is that you are marketing to sell, and then pricing accordingly.
mhm,
Because when our community sometimes underprices at higher rates than other communities for whatever reason. It's
mhm,
almost as if our ice isn't cold enough, which is not the case. It's not the case, but I think sometimes it's that fear. Well, if I charge too much, then maybe they won't buy it, or maybe they won't come to my store so if I go lower, then and I think that's the mistake that we make a lot. So I think if I could just give two quick, it would be that one, to know exactly what your why is for starting a business, and then two, make sure that you're pricing matches with the amount of effort, time, and resources that go into actually putting that product or service together.
I think you are so right. I have definitely experienced that struggle with pricing, because you have these thoughts like, well, how do I price it so that people will buy it? Because I think there's that fear. I think especially within our community, I guess maybe we intuitively know that the dollar doesn't stay in our community very long. So we're thinking we're trying to keep it a little bit longer by underpricing ourselves. But you're very right that if you don't know your own value, no one else will, right? And if you underprice your services, you will attract people who already from the get-go don't value your services, and that's not what you want to attract to your business. So
Yeah.
that's a great reminder. So I appreciate that. Um, and then you kind of started talking about this a little bit in terms of being a growth strategist and how you grow your business. A lot of times I think that, especially as Black people, we are hardworking, we're very creative, we have lots of ideas. So I think starting the business sometimes is easy because we have a passion, we know what we want to do, and with all that energy and that passion and excitement, we're ready to get started. But then I think sometimes we get to a place where we get stuck and we don't know how to grow it. We don't even know how to grow it to the place where we were replacing our income from the job we left. And then
Mm-hmm.
if we do have that goal of being able to hire 6 people or 60 people, we don't know how to do that either. So I would love for you to share some growth strategies. I guess first starting off with just getting to that point where you want to just replace your own salary. And then from the standpoint of wanting to just really make wealth, create wealth, have a legacy, create opportunities in your community by having a business where you can hire people.
Sure, sure. I think marketing is always going to be key, right? It's always what drives a business to grow is how you communicate that your business is here, that you've started a business, that your doors are open, whether it's your brick and mortar or your virtual doors are open for business, and that you're ready for people to spill in. That's what you think when you start, is that people are just going to want what I'm selling. I'm so passionate about it. I know that they're going to want it. Um, and sometimes it takes you getting that passion out of the way uh, to really focus on what it will take for your business to sustain. Because I can promise you, there's someone out here that's still passionate about eight tracks, right? But the market doesn't want an 8 track. What does the market want right now? And are you answering a need in the marketplace? And that's very important for growth. And I think we saw that with COVID, is that we saw a lot of businesses that when COVID hit, boom, they were forced to either quickly pivot one way or quickly
Mhm.
get out of the lane altogether. And so those businesses that were able to quickly adapt and quickly shift whatever it was that they may have been doing at the time and adapt to, we heard about all of those, the companies that were like liquor distributors turning into, now all of a sudden they were making hand sanitizer because some of the ingredients were the same, and they just quickly pivoted in order to kind of fulfill a need. And they were able to maintain their revenues because they were able to pivot. And I think a lot of times that growth kind of depends on how you respond to the market, and how you're testing your products, testing your services in the marketplace to understand what's working and what's not working. At the beginning of COVID, my husband and I bought the Carve My Yard franchise, and we answered a need. In our community, no one was going outside. We weren't having birthday parties. We weren't doing anything. So it was a perfect time to buy this franchise where we can bring, signs to the homes and, businesses of people that couldn't celebrate with their loved ones. They could not
Yeah.
be around them. So now they have, and that business for us, it unlocked a market that we didn't even know existed. Or didn't know, people probably didn't even know they wanted it until it showed up, and didn't even know they needed it because of the pandemic. So we were able to kind of tap into something right at the perfect time that really kind of diversified the revenue that we were kind of bringing in under the Consult Square brand. So I think that that is important when you talk about growth, is how you're able to adapt quickly, the type of marketing strategies that you put in place that allow you to reach the audience, being able, everyone is so dependent on social media, but social media is not the avenue for every single business. It's not the end all be all of how, every single type of business is marketed. And they're all individual roads that we have to take in order to hit that plateau of growth that we're looking for.
Yeah. So, what are some of the other top ways to market? For instance, with your business, the Yard My Card, what are some of the marketing strategies you used?
We use Google Business a lot. So we do a lot of analytics. We do a lot of kind of micro targeted advertising, and then we also do word of mouth. We work with schools. We outreach to community center. I mean, any anything that deals with people celebrating, we've touched it in some way. Also, and this kind of goes with the industry of Card My Yard, but it goes against something I said earlier about pricing. But we also do a lot of community service. We do a lot of we give away a lot, and it's really to not just for the good of being a strong community partner, but also because we want people to see our brand. We want them to see our product on the yard of the fairground, or the yard of a school, and our business associated with it, so that we did a school a few weeks ago for back to school, and just from one welcome back sign, we probably got 20 or 30 calls for signs over the course of the fall. So I think it just depends on the business what the marketing strategy is, but Google definitely for us has worked very well, and I was able to do very targeted marketing campaigns within the Google Business program. We do social media, but on the flip side, for my consulting business, that looks a little bit different, because I don't really do a lot of marketing on any platforms. It's more B2B. So with that business, I want to be in front of other businesses. That might mean I need to go to a trade show. That might mean I need to go to an event where I'm able to speak in front of an audience, or to talk and to make those connections. When it comes to contracting, be it in the private or the public sector, that might mean hiring someone who can do RFPs, and that can help to kind of draft those for the business and respond to any type of solicitations that might come from a federal agency for opportunities. So it looks a little different for me on the consulting side, because it's more B2B as opposed to direct consumer.
That makes sense. Thank you so much for breaking that down. That was awesome information. Another thing that you do is partnerships and alliances. And I think as an entrepreneur, I am anxious to be in partnership with other businesses. But how do you identify what other business or individual might make a good partner? And then how do you sort of develop a partnership so that it's a win-win for both parties?
Yes, I am a strong advocate for partnerships, for joint collaborations, for joint ventures, because a little bit of something is more than nothing, and especially when you're looking at big business and going after larger contracts, a lot of times what is daunting to businesses of color is that we don't have the capacity to take on, you know, a 50, 60 million dollar contract,
Mhm.
right? Because to me, something that would be, $500,000, that sounds good. But to a target, they want someone who has the capacity to take on something much larger, right? So that's when the conversation around partnerships and kind of these joint ventures, it makes a lot of sense, because if there's a large, say, construction firm, and this is a part of the work that I do at NMSDC, and the government is infamous for the what they call bundling of contracts. So they'll put say a construction contract that's worth a couple $1 billion for a bridge. They'll put a construction contract together, and within the construction contract, they have legal, they have marketing, they have,
Mhm.
all kinds of other built into this construction contract. So, in theory, does a construction company really need to do marketing? No, but what they've done is bundled it all together, right? So, advocacy groups as well as other lawmakers are in the process now of unbundling all of that. Because when
Mhm.
you bundle it, what you do is you box out many businesses of color, because we don't have the capacity to do a $50 billion contract, construction job, nor do I want to. So with these unbundling, they're unbundling. And so now this 50, 50,000, 100,000, $200,000 piece for marketing now is something that I can bid on that when you take it apart,
Mhm.
and you can throw in something, you can throw in accounting and marketing. And here I have, Stephanie, who has a consulting business. She does accounting. Now Stephanie and I can come in and bid on this together. We can bid on this,
Right.
and now we look like we have much more capacity because we've banded together as one venture that can take on a project that is much bigger. So whether that's a
Mhm.
50-50 or a 70-30, whatever that looks like, we decide that before we even go in to bid on it. But now it's something that we can tackle. And I think even on a smaller level, when we kind of make these partnerships and these alliances, what it allows us to do is simply expand our capacity. And it
Mhm.
it sometimes is difficult to find, that person or that company that would be a good alignment for us. I think there are several groups, and I'm trying to think of them off the top of my head, and of course nothing is coming to me, where
Mhm.
they actually kind of bring those kind of partnerships together. um, as you mentioned, I'm on the third, and it is a
Mhm.
collaboration of women in business. So there are several ways to kind of get connected with other people that may be in a kind of parallel industry, that may be a great kind of complement to what it is that I might offer, or what it is that the next company might offer.
Mhm. Yeah, awesome. Uh, I am really excited to see all of the entrepreneurs and philanthropists, and those of us who are building wealth, and those of us with our regular jobs, JOBs. There's room for all of it. I think
Yeah.
as Black people, as people of color, some of us are the first generation of wealth builders. So how do we take the wealth that we build and have it, of course, benefit our families, but also not just benefit our families, but benefit the community as well, and help to kind of build this Black Wall Street?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to my earlier point, is just to be intentional about our spending, to be intentional about the things that we expose and open our families to. And when when I say intentionality about spending, we want to get our dollar in our community for longer than 6 hours or longer than 6 days. And I hear, well, it's no black this in my community. There's not a black McDonald's. There's not a black Starbucks. And it's interesting because I talked to a very good friend of mine who is, and he turned me on to this a few years ago. The president of the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce, Ron Busby, and he was like, there, he gave me a list, and he was like, these are all the, I gave him a list of my favorite stores, my favorite restaurants, and he's like, here's a list of the black, these are the black owners that are in your area, and he said, I want you to go to this a black owned Starbucks in PG County. He said, buy a gift certificate or a gift card for $100. He said, you can use that at any Starbucks, but now you've made an intentional decision now that you are going to patronize a black business anywhere you go. Same thing with Chick-fil-A. I know where all the black owned Chick-fil-A is.
Wow.
And it's just about being intentional about your buying habits so that you can continue to sow into the black community to do that around your kids so that they can watch the intentionality behind your spending. And my kids have, well, one of them, my older son, he has a business that he had started a few years ago. And so I teach him early. He took an investment class over the summer at Howard County Community College a couple years ago and learned all about investing. So he started an investment club with about 4 of his friends, all black boys, with a financial advisor from Howard County, who has helped them over the last few years to grow their combined portfolio to upwards of $10,000 just for young black boys under the age of, well, now they're about 14 years old. But at the time that they started, they were like 11, 12 years old. And just with like spare change over the course of the years, just investing in themselves. And, so I think hitting it from all fronts, and it can be aggressive when I talk about it because I kind of live it from day to day. But even starting small, just kind of making that intention to support when events are happening that there are going to be businesses of color that are vending, to go out and to pay full price for what they're selling. It makes a difference.
Yeah. That is awesome. That just blew my mind, what you just shared about looking for Black owned franchises and buying a gift card and then using the gift card at whatever Starbucks or whatever Chick-fil-A. I think that is life changing. I think that if we could have everybody do that, we could really start to make a difference and make a dent in the Black wealth and keeping the money circulating in our community. And I think it's also awesome about your son's business, and that's very inspiring and empowering for our young people. That was awesome. Now, you mentioned the Third, and we share several circles together. We're both members of the Third and our sorority, as well as Jack and Jill. So how do you find the time? And I know you said that early on you were used to just doing a lot of things, but how do you find the time, or how do you find the balance amongst all of your roles? You're an adjunct professor, you're a business owner, you're in all these organizations, so you do a lot. Your mom. How do you balance it?
Yeah, and my life is very compartmentalized. And I read this book about, I would say maybe 7 or 8 years ago now, and it was called the 4-Hour Work Week. And in this book, the author talks about how he had a 9-to-5 job, but how he kind of transitioned his work week down to 4 hours simply by kind of compartmentalizing his actions and his day to day. And from things to like as small as responding to text messages, to checking the mail, to, it was very compartmentalized. And I kind of took bits and pieces of that book to heart, and in my own life kind of compartment in the course of my day, I do probably 100 unique things, and that is no exaggeration. And a part is probably my mind is so scattered that I need it to stay sane. But a part of it is that intentional compartmentalization that I feel like I've kind of mastered at this point. Is that I do, when I do things for Coppin, and when I plan lesson plans, it's at I have a very finite time that I work, for school things. My office hours for my students is, when to reach me. Yeah, I have a very, my schedule for when I take clients for Consult Square is very finite. But the biggest chunk of my time goes to my family and my kids. And I like to always be open to whatever it is that they have going on and whatever it is that they want to do. And I think the beauty of the last few years is that, I've been at home a lot more, and I haven't traveled as much as I used to. So I'm home in the morning. I'm home, during the day. I'm home when they get home from school. So I'm able to be kind of present throughout their entire day and their week. And it has made a difference because I have that kind of crunch time during the day that I get everything done. So that top and that bottom half of my day are strictly for them. I get up extremely early, and I have a set of things that I do in the morning. But then there's a gap when I have to get them up and get them ready and get them, and have our conversations and kind of that fuel that I need and that they need to have a productive day. And then we do that again at the end of the day. So, I try to be very intentional about the time, and I keep using that word because it's like a theme, is to really be intentional about my time and where I put it. But really what kind of gives me that time to do everything that I take on is making sure that it fits into a place in my day. And I say no to a lot. And it seems like I do a lot, but I probably say no to even more than I do. I'm pretty sure that I do, because it doesn't fit. And I was asked in an interview, it might have been maybe 5 or 6 months ago. It was in the winter, and they asked how I make decisions on what I say yes and no to. And I had, a checklist, and the first thing was, is it something that my entire family is passionate about? Is it something that brings joy and value to our family? And so when I look at everything that I do, it's really wrapped up in family. It's wrapped up in legacy building. It's wrapped up in all of that, because that's why I'm doing it. That's what I'm here for. Everything can kind of fade away. But if it's not great for them, then it will never be great for me, so that's why I do it. So that has to remain my first priority at all times.
Yeah. I love that. So many different things that you said. I could ask 1,000 questions, but I know our time is coming short. So I have one question that I always ask of all my guests, and that is about limiting beliefs. Just hearing you talk about how intentional you are about how you spend your time, about how you make decisions, about how you run your businesses and grow your businesses. What limiting beliefs did you have to overcome in order to get to this place where you're able to just kind of be able to say no and move on, where you're able to compartmentalize what you're doing into specific segments of your day, and if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit?
Yeah, and that doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen overnight that you get out of your own way. And I can remember probably up until maybe 10 years ago, I had a way that I presented myself that was the way that I knew made other people comfortable. So I would always tell people, they were like, why don't you wear your hair in braids? Your hair looks so great in braids. I can't go to work with my hair in braids. What will people think of me if I have my hair, And so it took me a while to get out of my own way, because I kept thinking, what is someone else going to think about me if I say this, or if I look this way, or if I do this thing? How will I be accepted? And it wasn't until I accepted myself for who I am, flaws and all, and was very real about the things that I, my own story, my own journey, my failures, my successes, and I accepted them and I forgave myself, that I was able to say, I'm, I am who I am. I am the person that God made me to be, unique and creative and funny and, sometimes a little bitchy, but nonetheless, I am me. Take it or leave it. That I was able to really get that confidence to step out in a lot of spaces in my life, because I was really following, the steps that were kind of in front of me. When I was in high school, you go to high school, you go to college, you get out of college, you get a good job. There were things that were in place that you just do out of habit. There was, it was the right thing to do. And
Mhm.
so I just did those things. And it wasn't until I kind of came to that point where I understood that it's nothing wrong with being different. I tell my son this all the time. You don't have to look like everybody. You don't have to wear your hair like it. You don't have to listen to everything that everybody else listens to. If they jump off the bridge, so, and it's okay to be different. And have a love-hate relationship with, the screen time and the amount of, because they're exposed to everything. But I think in them being exposed to everything, they're kind of okay with it. They're okay with the
Mhm.
freedom of people being who they are. And
Mhm.
I just remember a time, and I was in middle school and in the 80s, that we all kind of dressed alike. We didn't want to be the one that looked different, or that, you know, and now I'm probably I pride myself on being different. I want people to remember me for, for the extension locks, for, for whatever it is I have going on that month. Because I think that makes me me, and that's what makes people interesting, and it makes life interesting, is when
Mhm.
you can bring out all of those qualities about yourself that are unique and interesting, and still be able to make an impact in the world and have people accept you for that.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to, just as we wrap up, I just wanted to say thank you. This has been an amazing conversation. I have 50 more questions in my head, so I may have to invite you back when you have
I'd love
time.
I'd
Oh,
love
thank
to.
you, thank you. Um, but I just wanted to just ask you to just share with everyone how they can follow you, how they can reach you, if they need a card, if they need consulting services, how they can support you.
Yeah, all of my social media are Miss MRS, Mrs. Jetheda. So Mrs. my first name, that's Instagram and Facebook, and LinkedIn is just my Jetheda Hernandez. The Card My Yard is Card My Yard. cardmyyard.com/Howard. If you're looking for a celebration sign, if you're looking for any type of consulting services, that's consultsquaregroup.com. And then if you're looking for any type of certifications for your business, my email address, that's nmsdc.org, jatheda.hernandez@nmsdc.org.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, you heard it. We've got some great knowledge tonight. Everybody, enjoy your Labor Day weekend. And thank you again. And we will get our lunch in, and we will
Yes, yes. I can't
and we
wait.
will have another time to talk. Good night. Thanks so much.
Thank you.